Hello everyone! Today I'm going to show you how to crochet the Granny Heart Ruffle Table Runner. This is customizable, so you can make it any length that you want. This is also a good pattern if you wanted to make a baby blanket or some other sort of modular type project. For this tutorial, I made a whole bunch of squares using the Granny Heart tutorial, and that square is right here. I also used the matching Granny's Heart Mate square, which is right next to it. This square matches up perfectly with this Granny Heart square, so it's easy to join them together. In this video, we'll be joining as we go and then adding 2 rows of the ruffle border. I am going to be using some acrylic yarn, a 5.5 millimeter crochet hook. You'll also need scissors and a yarn needle to weave in your ends. Once you have all of that together, let's crochet the Granny Heart Ruffle Table Runner. And once we have all of our squares lined up in whichever order that we want them, we can now join them as we go. Now, of course, you can join them in any way that you're most comfortable joining. I'm going to do a quick join as you go tutorial so you can see what I'm doing. I have lined up 2 squares by a lot of squares all the way down the table. If you're making a baby blanket or another type of project, you may have more squares lined up across the bottom than I do, and that's perfectly fine. I have a few other tutorials on my channel about how to join as you go if you're interested in that, and those will be linked down below. I've got my first 2 squares. I'm going to join with some white yarn right here. We're always going to start in that bottom right corner, and we're just working a granny shell stitch. I'm going to start with a slip knot on my hook. I'm going to grab my first square, and really you can work in any corner. It will, wherever you start, it will be that bottom right corner. I'm going to put my hook in, slip stitch to join. I'm going to chain 3 and work 2 more double crochets right into that same space where we just joined. I'm going to chain 1, find the next space, and work 3 double crochets right into that space. Chain 1, 3 double crochets into the next space, chain 1, 3 double crochets into the next space. So we're just basically working a traditional granny shell stitch around. So now we're at the top corner here. We started down here. We're going to work around across the top and back down. So you're going to leave this end unfinished. In the corners we work 3 double crochet, chain 3, 3 double crochet, we're going to work the same thing, chain 1 in between your shells and work 3 double crochet shells into each of those chain spaces. And when you get to the corner, you're going to work 3 double crochet, chain 3, 3 double crochet right into that same space, and then work down the side. And I will meet you back here. Remember, don't go all the way around. Stop when you get to here. I have worked all the way around except for that last edge, which we're just going to leave. Into this last corner, we're going to work 3 double crochets. I'm going to chain 3, and instead of going along this edge, I'm going to work into my next square. So I'm going to pick it up, and if I lay it out how it is going to be, I'm going to join into this corner right here, which is just to the left of the square that I just worked. But since this is a brand new square, it really doesn't matter. You can pick it up and work into any corner that you want. After you've chained 3, you're going to work 3 double crochets right back into that corner. And it does get a little bit fiddly as you're joining the squares, just because everything is kind of being twisted all over the place. Alright, so I have now joined that next square. So now we have something that looks like this. We have started our join, so we've worked 3 double crochets into that corner. We have our chain 3 space at the very bottom. We're going to just let that hang to the bottom. We're going to ignore that. And now we're going to join each of these squares together. So I'm just going to flip my work a little bit so I can see what I'm doing. After we have our first 3 double crochets into that new corner square, I'm going to slip stitch right into this first chain space from our previous square, working into our next space on this new square, 3 double crochets, slip stitch into the next space on that first square, and then 3 double crochets into the next space on the new square. Let's make sure I did a double crochet there. Slip stitch, three double crochets, slip stitch, and now we are at a corner, so 3 double crochets into that corner space, chain 3, and let's work right back into that same corner space. So 3 double crochets. So you're just working a corner on this corner. We are ignoring that corner here. So once we get the next level, the next row of our squares, we will join those corners together, as well as the corners from these 2 squares. Now we can continue working along this top edge. If you have more squares, if you have, say, a square here and maybe another one, you would do the same thing. You'd work this way, work your corner, come down, and when you get down here, you do exactly what we did over here. and work up and over. When you get to the very furthest edge of your project, you want to leave this open and unworked, this open and unworked, and this one open and unworked. So since this is my last square, I'm going to work until this point, bring in my square that goes right on top, and join that one, and I will meet you when I get to that point. I've worked those few shells across the top. I'm going to work half of a corner. So I need to chain 1 and then 3 double crochets into that last corner before I bring in the square that goes right above it. Just like that. I'm going to grab my square that's going to sit right up top here. To make it easier for me to work, I'm just going to turn my work a little bit, find my hook. You want to chain 3 before joining in that new square, so chain 3, and then just like we did when we joined the other square, we're going to work 3 double crochet right into the corner. Going to flip my work around, find that first space, slip stitch into it. Just like what we've been doing, you work 3 double crochets into the next space of the new square. Find your next space of previous square and slip stitch to join. 3 double crochets into the next space of the new square, and so on. We are now at our corner. I'm going to work 3 double crochets into this corner. So here we are. We've got our first square up here. We joined this square. This one goes right above it. Now we need to bring in this diagonal opposite corner. Ignore this corner from the square and focus on its opposite. We're just going to slip stitch into that corner. Like I said, it can get a little bit fiddly with these slip stitches and joining, but just set your work down if you need a pause to see where you are. You can see this corner is unworked. Here's my next square. I'm going to work 3 double crochets into the corner. Alright, so you should have something like that. We're leaving these open. We're going to join them as we work back around, and we're going to do the same thing. You slip stitch into those spaces from the squares that we've already worked, and you work 3 double crochet into those spaces on the new square. We're at the outer edge corner. I'm going to work 3 double crochets into this corner here of our new square that we're joining. And now we're going to join into this corner here, and because we don't have any more squares to join, we're going to do things a little bit differently. We're going to chain 1 and slip stitch right into that corner, chain 1, and then we can finish our corner on that new square. So 3 double crochets into that same corner space of that new square that we're joining. So this is sort of the method that I'm using to join all of my squares together. So we started here, working up and around, over, up, across, jumping up and over. I am going to work around here, and I'll meet you here so I can show you how to bring in this unfinished corner, and then we'll continue up and over, leaving this edge open. Here is that corner, and there is that unfinished corner that we need to now join up with this square here. So you're always going to be joining opposite squares in those corners. I need to work first into that corner here, so you can see as we worked along that side, we worked half of the corner. I need to finish up that corner, so 3 double crochets into it. And now we're going to join with this yarn to this corner chain 3 space. I'm going to chain 1 and just pull that loop up a little bit. I need to turn my work, find your unfinished chain 3 from those corners. You're going to go right through that chain 3, and then here is your other corner join. Put your hook under those. So now you have these 2 sort of chains over your hook. You're going to put that loop back on your hook, tighten it up, pull back through everything, and chain 2, and now we can finish this corner. So we're going to work 3 double crochets into this corner, just like this. We're going to do the same thing that we've been doing, slip stitch into those spaces and work our granny shell stitches into these spaces, working the corner as normal, leaving this corner unattached to this corner when you get there, working across the top, and then bringing in your new square just like we did down here. My next square is actually the granny heart square, which I want facing out on each side. When you're working a granny square that has a pattern worked into it and has a clear right and wrong top bottom, you want to make sure as you're joining as you go that you have your square lined up the way that you want it facing when your project is done. So this is the bottom of my project. We're looking at it long ways. I am choosing to have my hearts facing outwards instead of this way. So when I go to join the square, I need to make sure that it's lined up in the way that I want it in the project. So just a note, make sure if you're working a granny square that has a clear top and bottom, right or left, make sure that you have it laid out in the way that you want it as you're joining these squares. So I'm going to go ahead, work all of my squares all the way up this table, and I will be back to show you how to go around for the final granny shell join where we incorporate this edge and this edge down here. When you reach the top and you're working up this last corner square, we're going to do something a little bit different here. So I'm going to continue up this side. This last shell before we reach that very top edge. And now here is my corner, and I want to join it in the same way that I've joined this outer corner along that right side. So I'm going to work 3 double crochet, chain 1, slip stitch into that corner space here from our other square, chain 1, and then finish the corner on this side, so 3 double crochets. Chain 1, and I'm going to continue working the granny shell round here. So 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet in the next space. We've got our corner here. It's going to be the final corner. We're not joining any more squares, so we can just work right around, working the 3 double crochet, chain 3, 3 double crochet into that corner, and then work down along this side. I'm going to meet you right here so I can show you what to do with this little chain 3 on the edge. So that unfinished edge does have this chain 3 where we jumped up to join squares, and I will meet you here so I can show you what to do with that. Here we are along that unfinished edge, and this is the same process that we'll do on that bottom unfinished edge. We're going to work 3 double crochets into that corner where we did half a corner. So that will finish the corner. We're going to chain 1 and then just slip stitch into that chain 3 space. Chain 1, jump to that next corner where we have half a corner over here, and we're just going to work 3 double crochets into that same space so we can finish that corner. And now we can just chain 1 and work 3 double crochets, chain 1, 3 double crochets into each space, and working the 3 double crochets, chain 1, slip stitch into that chain 3 space, chain 1, and then 3 double crochets to finish that next corner. And that's how you're going to work all around. I'm going to go ahead and finish up joining this last edge, and then we will meet back here to put on a border. You should have a long piece that runs the length of your table, or however long that you want it. We're going to grab our colors. I have my dark kind of coral pink and light pink, and we're going to work 2 rounds of a border. To start, you're going to want to start in any of these chain spaces from your final granny shell round. So what I'm going to do is start in one of these bottom chain spaces so I can show you the pattern that we're going to work in each of these chain spaces, and then I will show you the corner. We're going to start with a slip knot on our hook, and I'm going to turn, so I'm going to start a few shells away from that corner, and I'm just going to join this new color with a slip stitch, chain 3, and work 1 double crochet right back into that same chain space. Every chain space is going to have 2 double crochets, and what we want to do now is yarn over, and you're going to work a double crochet into the base of this first stitch. So yarn over, find that base stitch. There should be 2 loops, and this first one is a little bit tricky just because it is where we joined. And then you're going to work off your double crochet. So yarn over, back through 2, yarn over, back through 2. I'm going to chain 2, jump to my next chain space, and I'm going to work 2 double crochets, yarn over, and find that base stitch. So you can see there's my double crochet that I just worked, and then here is that first double crochet. You should have those 2 loops that wrap around that chain space, and you just want to put your hook under those 2 loops. It's what I call the base of the stitch, and then work a double crochet. Chain 2, same thing in this next space, 2 double crochet, yarn over, and work a double crochet around the base of your first double crochet, chain 2, and now we're at the corner. So in a corner we're going to work 3 double crochets. So it's the same principle, we're just working 3 double crochets instead of 2. So 3 double crochets, yarn over, and now work back into the base of that first double crochet. Chain 3, and work 3 double crochets right back into that same corner space, yarn over, and find the base of the first set of those 3 double crochets and work a double crochet around that base stitch. Chain 2, skip to the next space, and now we're going to work our 2 double crochets and then a double crochet around the base of that first double crochet. Chain 2, and so on. When you come across the spaces, these corners, if you have continuously joined, you've got sort of a corner here and a corner right next to each other without that shell in between those corners. What you're going to do is work directly into that corner here. So I'm going to work 2 double crochets right into that corner space, just like I've been doing, and then work your double crochet in that base stitch, chain 1 because we don't have the shell to work across, and then find that next space and work your 2 double crochets and a double crochet into the base of that first double crochet, and that will get you around those continuous join as you go sections. Chain 2 and skip that next shell and go directly into the next space. When you get back around, you're going to do your chain 2, skip that next shell, find one of these top stitches and just slip stitch into it to join that round. And now we're going to pick up our last color. For me, that is going to be the light pink. You're going to start with a slip knot on your hook, and you're going to start in any space. I'm going to start in one of these spaces here so I can show you what to do on the corner. So we're just going to insert our hook into any of those spaces, join with a slip stitch. I'm going to work a half double crochet into that space, and now I'm going to work what is sort of like a spike stitch. So I'm going to yarn over twice as if I were to work a treble crochet, And I'm going to work into that middle stitch from our shell. So you can see you've got 1, 2, 3 double crochets. We want to work into that middle stitch. So we yarn over twice, put your hook in, pull up a loop, nice and tall, yarn over, back through 2, yarn over, back through 2, and yarn over, back through 2. And this yarn is very splitty on me today. Into that same space, I'm going to work a half double crochet right around that top chain, just like that. Chain 1, and we're going to skip a stitch, and into the very next we're going to slip stitch. And that stitch should fall right kind of in the middle of sort of our 2 double crochets and then that double crochet into the base. Chain 1, into the next space we're working a half double crochet, a spike stitch into that middle stitch from our granny shell, yarn over, back through 2, yarn over, back through 2, yarn over, back through 2, and work a half double crochet into that same space. So your half double crochets are worked around that top chain, and your middle stitch, which is your treble crochet spike stitch, is worked into the middle stitch from your last granny round, one of those shells. Chain 1, skip 1, slip stitch into the next, chain 1, and now we're at a corner. We're going to work 3 half double crochets into this corner space, and now I'm going to work around this previous chain. So I'm going to do a yarn over twice, put my hook into that space, pull up a loop nice and tall and loose, yarn over, back through 2, yarn over, back through 2, yarn over, back through 2. Make sure that that sits in between those 2 clusters of stitches from your previous border round. And to finish a corner, we're going to work 3 more half double crochets into that space, chain 1, skip 2, and work a slip stitch, chain 1, and now we're back to our spaces along the side. As you're working along, you're going to find that you have a few spots, again, right where this join was, if you did the continuous join as you go, where you're not going to have a middle shell stitch to work that treble spike stitch into. When you get to that point, we're going to work a half double crochet like normal, yarn over twice, and just go into that space here. So you can see there's the corner space here that we worked into from the previous round. We then have that space where the 2 shells are kind of sitting up against each other. There's the other corner space. I'm going to work right into that middle space with my treble spike stitch, back through 2, back through 2, back through 2, and then coming up on the other side, working a half double crochet around that chain, and you'll get the same effect. Chain 1, skip 1, slip stitch into the next. This yarn is really splitty. I suggest not using splitty yarn. Chain 1 into the next space, a half double crochet, yarn over twice, work into that stitch, middle stitch, and work off your treble spike stitch, and then coming back up to that chain, a half double crochet. I have worked my way around. I've just worked a slip stitch into that last sort of cluster shell here. I'm going to chain one, find that first stitch anywhere in that first stitch of the second border round, just slip stitch into it. We have Granny's Heart Ruffle Table Runner. I like to kind of press those granny squares down to flatten those out, and then it leaves a nice little ruffle on the border. I hope you enjoyed this crochet tutorial. Until next time, happy crocheting everyone. Bye!